All right, we're here again with Bill Tackett. So, Bill, the jury finds Elledge guilty in second-degree murder for his wife Mungshee G's death. General reaction first.
Well, remember, before they were trying to choose between reckless behavior and intent. They've landed on intent. Once they did that, they had to decide, was it premeditated? And it looks to me like there was such confusion after the murder that they felt like he definitely murdered her. He intended to do it, but that the pre-planning wasn't there because it was such a mess after the fact.
Seeing what you saw in court the past few days, do you think this is more of a win for the prosecutor or the defense?
Well, the prosecutor was asking for first degree. The defense was asking for the recklessness, the involuntary manslaughter. So they landed right in the middle, in between the two. But it still was a victory in the sense that for people that wanted it to be, he intended to kill her. People, her family, her friends. He intended to kill her. This wasn't an accident where suddenly he feels bad and he's a good guy. He's not a good guy, and it's official.
So the verdict comes out, but this isn't over. The trial continues.
Yeah, a few years back, actually quite a few years back, the Supreme Court for Missouri bifurcated these trials, and that's a fancy word for they split up the sentencing side from the guilt and innocence side. So they wanted jurors to decide on guilt or innocence, then turn to the sentencing and listen to aspects of the person's life. Their mother could take the stand, their preacher, they themselves can take the stand. Then the parties argue about what punishment, they're able to argue about what punishment should prevail here. And so it's separated out. Before it was all jammed in together, and they've split it up now.
If Elledge does take the stand tonight, do you think we see a different Joseph Elledge than the one that we saw when he was in the witness box?
Yes, there will be a different Joseph Elledge. Number one, he'll be much more articulate like he was on the audio tapes, right? That was always a difficulty for the defense. They have this guy being stoic and not answering questions and kind of defraying questions instead of answering. Now, the number of years he's going to serve in prison is on the line. I would think you would see you'll see the articulate part of his speaking. I think you should see remorse. You should see more of, I wish I hadn't done it. And it's all on the line for him. I don't think you're going to see the same guy you saw during the guilt phase.
Putting yourself in Dan Knight's shoes tonight, do you feel like you did your job?
Yeah, Danny Knight should feel very good about this. A tough case, and he had to put the patchwork together that I've always talked about, and he did it, and he convinced them that it was an intentional murder, not an accidental one, or at least one that has recklessness.
Going back, looking through the trial, is there a moment, a turning point that sticks out to you?
You know, the medical examiner oscillated a lot and never really landed on a specific spot. But he did give the jury a real sense of the force that it would take to break those ribs. And I think that really was enough, just enough, to kind of convince them, along with the fact that, you know, he's cruel, obviously. He's manipulative, obviously. He lies, obviously. But they needed that kind of piece of evidence that where the murder would stick. And I think it came through at that point.
Here in Missouri, second-degree murder carries that potential 10 to 30 or life punishment. Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, now the jury listens to his second-grade teacher, his mom, whomever, him, and then they make that determination. They deliberate again on, do I give him 10 years, which is the minimum, can't go below that. Do we do 30, or is it life? Now, in the state of Missouri, murder in the second degree has an 85% tag on it. In other words, you have to serve 85% of it without parole. So it's 85% of whatever they give him, he's guaranteed to do behind bars. So the minimum's 10 years. So he's the least he can get is eight and a half years without parole.
Joseph Elledge, these witnesses that the defense could call tonight, are these people getting coaching at all? Are they being talked to before they go up there?
Anybody that you put on in a penalty phase, which is what this is pretty sincere. I mean, it's hard. It's one thing to try to stand up for somebody and keep them from being found guilty. He's been found guilty. And so really it is people that have to know him and say he had a bad childhood or his parents messed him up or, you know, whatever it's going to be to say this is why he's the way he is. And his lawyer talked about that he was weird, is the exact word he used in closing argument, that he was awkward. And they produced a witness to say that, a neighbor to say that. So the lawyer may extend that and say the reason he's the way he is he was socially stunted because of A, B, and C. Therefore, you should not give him as much time.
I'll ask you this. Does the jury's decision tonight tell us anything about the potential other decisions they could make about punishments?
Well, you don't know what give and take there was. You don't know who was leaning toward going with murder first or who was leaning toward involuntary manslaughter. So there's going to be different levels, or there could be very different levels of belief on how much time should be given. Or they walked in and said, after a period of hours, said this guy's guilty of murder too. He dragged law enforcement and half of mid-Missouri around in circles and in knots, dragging a river and finding a body out in Rockbridge. And you know what? The guy gets life. It could be that simple. I mean, this guy really angered the jury when he took the stand and answered the questions the way he did. It did not go over well. You could see it on their faces. It was not a good day for him. So that's going to be a problem. Now they have to figure out a way to undo that, right, and make him appear to be somebody who had a bad childhood or some reason why he would be this bad of a person.
So talk to me about that. You're the defense attorney. Are you kicking yourself now for the decision? Or is Elledge potentially kicking himself for the decision to take the stand?
Yeah, defense attorneys, they get to advise the client. The client ultimately gets to decide whether they take the stand. I don't know in this case whether that's true. I can tell you that this defendant, it seemed like his personality was one that he would say, let me take the stand. I can handle this.
Are you surprised by the outcome?
No. I thought that the prosecutor really patched those pieces together to allow the jury to get to intent. I thought he was able to do that. And he worked really hard at this. This was not an easy case. This was a difficult case. And he pulled all those pieces together so that they could find the intent they needed to go with murder in the second degree. The murder in first degree, from my perspective as a former prosecutor, was tough because of what happened after the fact. And when you're talking about premeditation, there doesn't have to be a lot of time to premeditate. But to the normal person, they look at premeditation, they don't look at it as a legal term. They look at it like, okay, you planned to kill her, all right? And the fact that it was such a zoo after he killed her probably led them to believe that he decided to kill her right then and there, but it wasn't enough to be premeditated. Let's
talk about that. The prosecution came out today and admitted they don't need to prove cause of death. There was never a cause of death proven here, but we still get that second-degree murder charge.
Right.
The jury still finds him guilty. Tell me about the significance of that.
Well, I mean, it's simply proving that it was intended, all right? Whatever the cause is, did he intend to do this? Was there intent? As opposed to, was it a mistake or some other form of involuntary manslaughter? And that was the fight today and all through the last week. And Dan Knight had to put that together, and he did.
All right, Bill Tackett with great analysis. Bill, thank you.